So I've got to the end of reading my first file, my case file from being in care, and here are my thoughts on it. I think that as a young girl, that things could have been explained to me, as I mentioned, about what sexual abuse meant for my life. Yes, I had very difficult behaviour. I was in trouble for numerous accounts of violence, assaults, physical assaults, which ended me up twice in secure accommodation. But looking back on it, and I'm not excusing my behaviour or anything, because as I've mentioned, I'm really sorry for the things I did when I was younger. I just didn't know how to express my trauma. And what I do see as well is lots of things that the social workers and the staff expected me to do, but I don't see anything in their reports that covers them helping me to understand my trauma. They talk about me being quite intelligent, quite self-aware in a sense, knowing, for instance, what I wanted to do educationally and different things like that. But obviously, as a young child, you know, a young teenager, obviously I didn't have an understanding of my feelings. Looking back on it, I can see that my mum definitely knew something was wrong, which I've confirmed through, you know, reading different reports before. And it's something I talk about in my book, Daughter Arise, that she was aware that there was things going on with me, because in a conversation that she had with social services and the social worker who was assigned to my case, she said that she saw changes in me from the age of 10, 11 years old. But put it down to me just being difficult, because she said I was, you know, always pushing boundaries, answering back and stuff. But I did love my mum, you know. That's one thing that was evidently clear just from reading this first file. I loved her a lot. A lot of the social workers explained that I idolised her, had this idealisation of her, and they talk about having to consistently talk to me and, you know, address challenging things with me about why my mother never visited me, why my mum had to be encouraged and asked to come and see me and not wanting to do that of her own accord. And one placement in particular that I was in helped me to start to break down that idealisation. And in one report said that I was able to challenge my mum about her not realising certain things and challenging her about, you know, her visits and things like that. It was upsetting in the beginning to read this first file, because even though I've moved on, you know, that's 30 years ago, just on the outside looking in at all I was dealing with at the time as a young girl in care just made me really upset for the girl that I was. All the trauma, all the challenges I had. At no point really did I see any empathy in any of the reports that were written about me. And obviously I had some very difficult behaviour. I had, you know, emotional problems, but I didn't really see any kind of empathy or trying to look on things kind of from my point of view of how it must have felt for me. Actually, one social worker did kind of pick up on that a little bit, but I just felt like the onus was always on me to be making the changes and doing all these different things without even having an understanding really of what happened to me. So yeah, it's been interesting to read. I definitely see that I was very violent as a young girl, and I'm going to do a video on that, because I think out of everything that I went through, out of all my experiences of the after effects of going through sexual abuse, anger was definitely in the top 3 of problems that I had. But that's something that has got me into trouble quite a few times when I was younger. Educationally, I was let down. Once I was kicked out of my mainstream secondary school because of unmanageable behaviour, and then I was sent to a tuition centre, 2 tuition centres. Again, found it very difficult to work in those environments. And then going into, you know, therapeutic kids' homes that had you know, some type of education on site was a real disappointment for me. One of my desires was to get back into mainstream education, but that was not possible. But what I'm going to do now is quickly go through the second file, again share my thoughts with you about anything I come across in my file, and yeah, take it from there really.